Rodney Slater knows transportation. He also knows how Washington, D.C. works, serving as director of the Federal Highway Administration and subsequently as the Secretary of Transportation in the administration of the 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton. But how does one lead at a time when partisanship seems to be at an all-time high? How do we come together, not just in our politics, but also as a nation? In this episode of the Swift Hour, we'll talk with Secretary Slater, who is determined to find solutions by rethinking the way America moves. One of the things that feels a little bit different is there's a lot of issues that happen around the world that for a lot of Americans, they never thought would be happening here in the United States. The divisiveness, the partisan divide seems to continue to grow and grow. You watch cable news in the evening and between CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, you think you're in 3 different countries. You're very much focused on trying to change the tone, change how future leaders address this issue from combating partisanship. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not about sort of dismissing the fact that we have disagreements from time to time, or it's not to discourage debate. We have to have that. I mean, in a democracy, that's essential, that's critical. But there's a way to do it. There's a way to be civil about doing it. And we really need to renew the spirit of America. We talk about renew America together. People of different philosophies, backgrounds, different parties, really coming together and finding common ground. I mean, that's really the foundation on which our democracy was established almost 250 years ago. And so we're excited about our effort. We've got this educational initiative that's a part of it. It's a leadership program called Civility Leadership. It's a Civility Leadership Institute. We're now in our 2nd class. We're about to go to the 3rd, and they're of young leaders from across the country. We would hope at some point to have young leaders from around the world participating in this effort. But again, we think that it's good for our democracy. We also think that it helps us sort of rekindle this light on a hill, if you will, so as to influence and encourage other democracies around the world.
Well, when you put things in a little bit of a context, a perspective, from your time in the Clinton administration to today, do you see a significant difference in the tone of our politics and the tone of our dialogue?
Oh, definitely. I mean, now the Clinton administration was a little different, and I admit that. It was a sort of a third way sort of philosophy mentality, meaning neither right nor left, but a third way. Let's find what works as we negotiate, and let's go that way, because it's all about getting things done. It's not just about the argument. And I think one problem, one challenge with democracies around the world is that you've got a lot of people who have a question about whether government can deliver. And that's problematic because government by itself can deliver certain things, but it really needs to work with others to deliver even more. The private sector, parties of different, again, viewpoints. I mean, government has to facilitate all of that and sift through all of that to get things done on behalf of the whole. That's the purpose of government. And so, yes, there is a difference. And I'll tell you, even in the area of transportation, there's a difference. Even in the area of defense, there's a difference. Even in the area of diplomacy, there's a difference. You used to have those 3 areas that you could really assume there was going to be less of a difference, that the issues could be bridged. When it comes to transportation, I used to always say that it's about more than concrete, asphalt, and steel. It's about people. There are no Republican roads or Democratic bridges. You know, they're just roads and bridges. And all of it is essential to people realizing really the promise of America, having an improved quality of life and liberty and this pursuit of happiness, meaning a movement toward it. Not always to enjoy it fully. I mean, there are no guarantees, but at least that ability to move towards it. And I can tell you, I had support from Republicans and Democrats during my tenure. I remember when President Clinton was actually announcing my nomination, and he said, you know, I started to worry when I was getting so many Republicans suggesting that I nominate Rodney Slater. But that's because we had worked together when I was a member of the Department of Transportation leadership heading up the Federal Highway Administration. I also remember individuals like Norm Mineta and Bud Schuster, who were the ranking and chair of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. They actually flipped from time to time because you'd have a change in Congress, but they worked together so cooperatively and positively. I remember Norm Mineta taking me on and others on this Codell, and the first stop was actually Russia. You know, right after Gorbachev and during the Yeltsin administration, and we were literally walking through the back corridors of their White House, something that few Americans had done before, if any, and clearly few since. But that was sort of democracy taking hold, even in Russia, and clearly, you know, with the collapse of the USSR, but and the U.S. and Russia working together in positive ways. We need to see that sort of thing again, and I hope we do.
What does success look like over the next few years? You're in year 2 of this program with Renew America Together. Mm-hmm. What does define success?
Well, I think success means that we may in fact have the same kinds of issues that are potentially disruptive, but we're in a better mindset for dealing with them. You know, it's really about the mindset as I view it. I mean, most people or some have said that it's really not so much Thoreau, not so much what you look at, but what you see. And all too often we see us and them rather than just us collective. And we see, that group and that group, me, mine, and others, and theirs. And we think that this pot is a static, sort of defined piece of good, when in effect it's always been about expanding the pie, making it bigger. I think that's what the founders were talking about when they said a more perfect union. You have to have hope to have a belief in a more perfect union. Even when you've compromised to get the best that you can get, that's the foundation on which you build the rest. And I think it's short-sighted of us to sort of suggest that they believe that they got it all right in their day and in their time. No, they didn't believe that. If they had believed that, they wouldn't have provided an opportunity for amendment. They wouldn't have provided, again, this provision or this phrase about this creating a more perfect union. They knew that there was still more work to do. And so hopefully 2-3 years hence, we'll be able to recapture that spirit, to recognize that in our day and in our time we do what we can do, and then we pass the baton on to others, hopefully with the race having been advanced.
Let's talk a little bit about your time running the Department of Transportation, your incredible history there. Seems to be this continuing and ever-growing divide between Americans, especially from a socioeconomic perspective. We're seeing potentially a dramatic transformation of the American heartland, with companies reinvesting and starting to build again. But it feels like we're looking at the issue of transportation and infrastructure and access to digital in a different way today than we did years ago. What is working and what is not working?
Well, let me just say, I think we should be. During our tenure, we actually put together a study called The Changing Face of Transportation, and it covered the period from 2000 to 2025. So we're coming up on the end of that sort of visionary piece. We had the good fortune of Secretary Coleman during the Ford administration having done the same thing from 1975 to 2000. And at that time, we were talking about a partnership for a new generation vehicle. We were talking about intelligent superhighways. And now you see all of that manifested with autonomous vehicles, with a move towards electrification. A big piece of our study sort of tried to carry to its natural extension a lot of the thinking of the Vice President Gore, and his focus on climate, which was a big issue at the time. We were also looking at the changing types of skills that would be necessary to operate in this new environment. And so we created this Garrett A. Morgan Technology Transportation Futures Program, named after Garrett Morgan, who invented the traffic light. And so we were stretching then. We were engaging our international partners. We hosted the nations from Africa. We hosted the globe with transportation future kinds of events. We had a 55th anniversary meeting of the Great Chicago Convention. We went back to Chicago and tried to sort of recapture the spirit of Churchill and Roosevelt near the end of the World War II, when they realized that commercial aviation was going to be a big thing. So they laid the groundwork for that. We were trying to do the same. And I think Secretary Buttigieg is on track with all of the new investments to do the same, especially with an investment in broadband, an investment again in EVs and automation. And so I'm excited about what's happening. Again, I think that it will take us to a point where we can do away with a lot of parking lots and turn those spaces into parks, because we won't have to have space for a vehicle to sit literally 95% of the time. I mean, most vehicles are parked 99% of the time. And we actually build a system that is designed to accommodate rush hour rather than a 24-hour movement cycle, right? So there are many things we can do to manage the system better. And I think actually COVID has given us insights about that we did not truly appreciate or were not willing to test before. All of that traffic was literally taken from the system because people were staying at home, which is another, innovation. We've talked about a 4-day work week for a long time. Now, we're probably doing 5 days still, but they're not necessarily at the office. So these are, interesting times to think about transportation differently. One last point that I'll close with is we used to actually watch the developments of the State Department. And every time there was a diplomatic breakthrough, we were in there. Because anytime there's a diplomatic breakthrough, there's a desire to reconnect or to connect. A road, a bridge, liberalized aviation policy and agreements. So we would actually follow Secretary Albright and her team around the globe. And every time, again, there was a diplomatic breakthrough, there was an opportunity for us to be a partner with that country, very much like the president then meeting with the head of state, acknowledging that diplomatic breakthrough, would almost always want something tangible to show what it truly meant. And transportation was a way to do that. Other ways to do it as well, but transportation always a good way to do it.
Well, Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
It's great to hear your thoughts. It's great to hear about Renew America Together.
Yes.
Excited to see how it develops. I know we'll be hearing from you again soon on this.
Well, thank you. And again, congratulations to you guys with Concordia and the wonderful work that you're doing. Wish you continued success.
Thank you.
Thank you.